Call the roll.
Commissioner Dodd,
Here.
Commissioner Davidson,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson,
Here.
Commissioner Boyd,
Here.
Commissioner Irvin,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Chairman McAdoo.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First order of business, approve the minutes. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I've read the minutes and I find them to be in order, so I'd move to approve.
Motion to approve. I hear second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda, Goldstein building update. Call on Mr. Adams.
Commissioners, tonight's report on the Goldstein building, there's not a lot of new news to share. The architect and the engineers are continuing to gather information and review current findings. Architectural drawings are ongoing. We've tentatively scheduled the RFQ to be sent out on December the 15th, with pre-proposal conference scheduled for January the 2nd. The PBA and KSA are hoping to get a CM on board as soon as possible. This will aid in reflecting our most accurate cost assessment. And that completes the report on the Goldstein building.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? We just toured the Goldstein building, and it's mixed talk coming out of that building. And we really, if it's any way possible, Adam, get those architectural drawings and tentative price or whatever they're going to present to us as quickly as possible. Because after reviewing it, a lot of commissioners on the committee think we may need to go another route. And I'm probably looking at that too after we went for the tour. I like what Commissioner Davidson said. Walking those floors every day, you be drunk time you get to the top floor. That's for the level of the floors on the building. And it's cut up so much, I didn't know it was cut up really that much myself until I saw the back part of it, back offices. And we may need to look at something different. So we probably need that information as quickly as possible. Maybe look at going another route on that building. I don't know if that's the wishes of all the commissioners on the committee, but just in hearing the talk, really do think we need to readdress it again, looking at it. Is that what I'm hearing, or is that what the committee is feel like we need to do, or what?
I'm open. I personally am open to many uses over there, but the only thing I need, or the first thing I need, are numbers. So, and that's forthcoming. So I think once we see numbers, I think that's all we're waiting on. If it's demolition, if it's rehab, if it's raise the building and start from scratch, whatever's cheapest, and gets us the most square footage use. So I think until we get numbers, I have to just sit on it.
Yeah, Chairman, I know one of the comments made in there was trying to fit the building to our growing need. We had that conversation with Alan about for early voting, having adequate space, ingress, egress. I know one of the conversations we'll have is before going forward with just a renovation, is it actually going to suit what Rutherford County is looking like over the next not just few years, but if in 20 years we're looking at a population increase of nearly 200,000 people, just seems like we should consider that before moving forward. And I think that's what I'm hearing from the committee.
Okay, if we can speed that process along, Adam, you can talk to them and hopefully get us that information as soon as possible. Any other questions on Goldstein? Any other discussion? Okay, next, 20 North update.
Commissioners, the window replacement project is ongoing. The contractor is scheduled to resume work next week pending weather. I've reached out to department heads and various employees throughout that building to assist in compiling a punch list with any issues that are observed to ensure the installation is satisfactory. They are approximately 75% complete with that project. I will update the committee as the project comes to a close.
Any questions on 20 North? Toured that building also, and look like everything is progressing along fine over there. The leaks and whatnot, we're still doing the wait and see on it, but as far as right now, it's not leaking through the ceiling. Servers seem to be in a secure spot, climate control, so it's looking like we're going the right direction over there. Any questions on 20 North? Okay, next on the agenda, one-stop update.
Commissioners, this project continues to track well within schedule. The roof remains in the same condition as last month's report at 90%, as the contractor is still waiting on fascia boards and related materials due to supply chain issues. Sewer line is tied in and complete now. The water main, backflow preventer, it is complete and has passed inspection. The framing, mechanical, and electrical rough-in are complete, and they've also passed inspection. Site work, grading is ongoing. Door frames, storefronts are at 75%. Interior walls ongoing, and I estimate those at about approximately 75% complete. And I will take a moment to show you a few recent pictures. The entrance, office areas, various. That completes my report on Blackman. One stop.
Okay, next is public health and safety buildings update.
Okay, Rockville, this site, this project is tracking well. With the exception of glass, we found out at last month's OAC that the glass has been pushed back approximately 1 month due to supply chain issues. As everything else is on schedule. The roof is at 95% complete. The subs were there on site this week. That roof should be 100% by the end of the week. They've had to work around some weather. The hardy board has been delivered to site. The installation is set to begin first of next week. The masons have completed the stone veneer walls. The electrical and sprinkler inspections should be ready to be inspected within 7 to 10 days. The contractor anticipates plumbing fixtures within 2 to 3 weeks. The electrical fixtures have been delivered to site, and I estimate those interior walls at 50%. Exterior and the garage doors are at 100%. The contractor anticipates installation of the suspended ceilings within the next 2 weeks, and site concrete at the entrances is ongoing. That's the rear, as you would pull into the bays. I believe that's the fire side. Your front again. That completes my report on Rockville. So we'll move on to the Kittrell location. This project also is tracking well within their schedule for rain days, delays. This is also at that portion of the project where it looks like they're not really moving quickly, but this is a slow process. The CMU walls, the block work. They have recently started setting the trusses, as you can see from that picture. The mezzanine slab is complete. The contractor anticipates metal stud framing within the next 7 to 10 days as they build up from that mezzanine. There's a picture from the ground level looking up as they were setting them, and that was this week. There's some metal deck and other related roofing materials that have already been delivered on site. So those materials are there. So starting that roof shouldn't be an issue. That would be from your front entrance. That completes my report on the Kittrell Public Health and Safety Building. And at this time, there are no new updates concerning Las Casas or the Walter Hill locations at this time.
Okay, any questions? Public health and safety buildings? Commissioner Johnson?
You know, out in the public, you hear all kinds of rumors, so I just want to put one to rest tonight. Rockville, I was asked or told that the handicap spaces from the store were taken out of the project, the old building out there.
Old building.
Maybe I'm...
Chuck, are you talking about Rockville Public Health and Safety Building?
Yes.
I'm not aware of any ADA parking that has been removed from the
Building next door. Did I confuse it?
That sounds like the convenience center. Perhaps that construction has disrupted the old building next door. I'm not aware of an old building.
I think you're correct. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. No worries.
I know what Commissioner Johnson is talking about, and I talked to Commissioner Pettis-Reed about it, and Commissioner Pettis-Reed said that the people that was asking the question in general was looking at an old drawing. The new drawing do have ADA and all that in there. That's based on Pettis. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Next, well, you can stay up here if you want to on nursing home. CCRC discussion, I need our county attorney and nursing home attorney come forward. CCRC administrator and everybody.
Right.
Need everybody to join us.
Thank you, Chairman, Mayor, Commissioners. Well, I think I'll go first and then turn it over. I'm Philip Dodd, so I'm the third Dodd you've heard talk tonight. And I'm an attorney with Evan Cope, and we represent Community Care Rutherford County. I'm here in response to a request from Commissioner Anthony Johnson following the Property Management Committee meeting last month. And I'm here with the current administrator of CCRC, Tanner Faust. So very briefly from my part, you should have 4 documents in front of you. It's the answers to the questions we received from Commissioner Anthony Johnson, the charter of CCRC, the bylaws of CCRC, and the lease agreement between CCRC and the county. Very briefly, CCRC is an independent, not-for-profit corporation. It's not a subdivision or subsidiary of the county. It is authorized by the state to operate a nursing home. Its charter provides that the nursing home is for the benefit of the citizens of Rutherford County, and its bylaws provide for a 7-member board of directors elected by the county commission and chaired by the county executive. So all further relationship between the county and CCRC is governed by the lease agreement, which you should have in front of you. So that's really the long and short of the relationship between the two. This current lease agreement is for a period of 5 years and was approved unanimously by this committee at the May 27th, 2021 meeting. So that's pretty well it for my wheelhouse. I'll turn it over to Tanner Faust. He's here to answer the questions, which you should also have in front of you. And so I'm here to help out as much as I can. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I can go through the list of questions that were requested by Anthony Johnson. These were provided, a lot of these were really pulled out of the lease agreement that holds most of the information that's provided in details for these questions. But to answer the first question, who owns Community Care Rutherford County, the land in the building? That is owned by Rutherford County, and the structures that are situated on the land, all the structures that are built on the property are owned by Rutherford County. How many total acres? It rests on 25 acres, and then the building itself, the size of the building is approximately 67,000 square feet under roof there. Currently operating CCRC, as Philip said, CCRC is a nonprofit organization. It's operated currently by the board of directors that's in place, and it's currently under a management contract with United Church Homes, whom I am employed by, and we have been managing operations at Community Care Rutherford County since July of 2021. Responsible for maintenance. Under the terms of the lease agreement, Rutherford County agrees to maintain the roof, foundation, and outside walls of the buildings located on the property. CCRC is responsible, the actual community is responsible for providing day-to-day maintenance, inspection, and repairs for HVAC systems, smoke detectors, and fire control systems, beds, kitchen equipment. That includes stoves, refrigerators, chairs, tables, any other items of like nature. And additionally, CCRC is responsible for all expendable supplies and utilities consumed on the premises. What is the insurance aggregate? General and professional liability is $3 million policy aggregate. The property is $1 million, and CCRC is responsible for paying the insurance premiums. Are CCRC nursing care costs adjusted per resident's income or estate worth? No. CCRC accepts residents who are receiving public assistance for long-term care, Medicaid, or short-term rehabilitation, Medicare, skilled residents. CCRC also participates in is a provider for veterans VA benefits, as well as several Medicare managed care plans. The nursing home also accepts residents who have the means to pay out of pocket for if they just want to pay privately. Are any residents residing free of charge? No. Every resident has an insurance benefit for which the resident care is paid, whether that be through long-term care or short-term care. They could be long-term or skilled, receiving skilled post-acute services. Some residents have the means to pay with private funds, or they may own a long-term care insurance policy which covers the cost of their care. And then the last question there, the lease of property between the county and CCRC was renewed effective July 1, 2021, and will expire in June of 2026. So that concludes the questions that were requested by Mr. Johnson.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson?
Just for clarification, these were not just my questions. I was just the one that brought it up. But that's just the way it was. So, on the insurance aggregate, it's $1 million for the property. So, leasee pays the premiums. Is the aggregate considered a premium? Wouldn't think so, but not my expertise. And the reason I'm asking, because if not, then that payment falls back on the county.
Yeah, so to my understanding, my knowledge is that if there are any claims that are filed against the community, that is taken on by the community. We are, that's my understanding. I don't know if you have.
We had the county's listed as an additional insured on all of CCRC's policies, and so that should be the extent of the liability. Outside of that, CCRC pursuant the lease agreements is really the place to look for that, and it should be in your packet there. So the CCRC has agreed to indemnify the county for any claims if that's what you're referring to.
I may have missed that. I didn't see that we wouldn't be obligated. All I saw was that leasee pays premiums, but it was in the same sentence as the aggregate. And to me, that meant that we, the county, would pay. I didn't find any other verbiage.
No, sir, that means that CCRC takes care of all of those for CCRC's insurance.
I hear what you're saying, but I didn't see it in writing.
Okay.
That's my problem.
Commissioner Johnson, do you have the lease in front of you? Was there a portion of the lease that you were questioning the language of? Do you have that?
On second page.
Second page. Hold on a second. Well, under section, on the third page, under section 3, it talks about allocating costs between the leaseor, which is the county, and the leasee, which is CCRC. And the last sentence says, leasee shall also maintain fire insurance and extended coverage on the building and the contents thereof, and leaseor shall be named as an additional insured. So that takes care of the building and protecting that particular asset. Is that what you were asking about?
My question is, who pays? The way I understand the aggregate is that $1 million, we would pay up to the $1 million, and then the insurance would pay.
Well, no, I think that the insurance obligations are on the leasee, which is CCRC. So they're responsible for paying the premiums and maintaining the coverage on the building and for any incidents that were to occur inside the building. And they've got limits that are $1 million per, what did they put here? $1 million for the property, and then $3 million for the professional liability. We'd have to talk to our insurance department to determine whether that is acceptable coverage for our building. I imagine that they have looked at that the county's insurance department has looked at that and has determined that those coverage amounts are appropriate not only to cover the county's asset, which is the structure and the real property, but also for any incidents that might occur, slip and falls inside, et cetera. Now, of course, you could have a catastrophic event, which hopefully, God, never happens, and you're in excess of those amounts. And if we're in excess in those amounts, then we might be having some issues, but the risk exposure there is extraordinarily low.
I was just wanting to make sure we didn't have to pay.
To my understanding, that we're not paying any of the premiums on those policies or anything towards those claims, and there's language in here that would require CCRC to indemnify the county for those claims.
Their property consists of 2 parcels. One is the historic cemetery, which I know you don't do anything to that but upkeep. But I also noticed, unless I'm misunderstanding what I read, a child care building or daycare on the property, according to this, is paid for by the leasee. That's the cost of construction and maintenance. And it's my understanding that the county is going to build a daycare.
Been in discussion.
That, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
What's proposed?
that is being discussed. We're still in the preliminary stages of determining if CCRC wants to go in that direction. They're trying to find a way to do that, but the county has made no determination yet that that's the direction. We will partner with them in going with it. We just don't have enough details yet. And to that point, we'll be meeting again tomorrow to discuss that further. So I don't have an answer for you. And just because there isn't one, we just don't have enough information to make an assessment yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. But just the way it reads here, it just made me question why we're even speaking of spending the money on the daycare when it says plainly the leasee does.
I think I understand your question a little better. So the daycare facility that we currently have out there is an asset to the CCRC and the residents that are out there. It's a tremendous asset. It's also an asset to the employees that are out there. And in the previous commission, I think some of the commission members will vouch for this. There was a great discussion about expanding that and making it available to other county employees. And at one point we were talking, not we, but the county commission and the previous mayor were talking about, expanding that facility to up to 130 children for the capacity, 24/7, this kind of thing. Upon review and doing some research, that I believe the CCRC would agree and the county agrees that was probably a little big bite based on the need. And so we're in the process of scaling that back to find out where that sweet spot is so that it can be a service to county employees, maintain the service to the residents, and be a benefit to the employees at the CCRC. So that's literally what we're in discussion about. What does that footprint look like for expanded service, and how do we quantify that? Okay?
Thank you.
Great.
That was sort of a segue into my next question too, was unless I misunderstood, we didn't have any county employees out there. They're employed by CCRC. And if that's the case, why would they be on our insurance? And when they retire, they remain on our insurance if they're not county employees?
I don't have a good answer for the why. That's up to the commissioners. Currently, it's part of the agreement between the county and CCRC under that lease is what defines that agreement for county retirement, county medical, and county life insurance, with premiums paid from CCRC payroll deductions.
If I may add, and Mr. Dodd is correct, that's a policy decision made by this county commission and previous commissions and the previous mayor. So if we want to determine what the logic was for why they were included, we can certainly go back and research that. But my mayor's office doesn't have that information readily available. We'd be glad to supply that to you. But that was a policy decision made by the office of the mayor and the county commission. Indeed, it has.
Yes, I understand that. And the reason for my questions is we're up here to service our constituents, take care of the tax dollars, get the biggest bang for the buck. And these questions were asked of me, and some of them are mine. Is this the way we want to continue? And that's why I'm bringing these up, so we can look at it, and it may be a perfect situation out there. But I wanted to bring it up and, for discussion. And, I mean, you've got 9 new commissioners up here, and even some of the older ones may have a different view, and maybe not.
Well, if I may add to that, and I appreciate you bringing this to everybody's attention, because you're right. We have 9 new commissioners and we have a new mayor, and this is an opportunity for us to kind of learn the history of things. And there's never any reason why we shouldn't re-examine our position to see if it's changed. I will say this: there are certain positions within county government that are extremely difficult to hire for. They're difficult to find people to do them. CCRC does generally, I think, a pretty good job in recruiting and retaining highly trained people out there. It's a challenging position. I, for one, don't believe I'm capable of doing it. I wish I were, but I'm not. And so when I go out there, and I go out there pretty regularly, I'm blessed as a resident of this county to know there are people who've been out there for years and do a good job. And I think it's a lot easier, coming from the private sector, Commissioner Johnson, it's a lot easier to incentivize and maintain good people than it is to try to go find good people. So once you have good people, it's incumbent on us to try to keep them. And I think some of the benefits the county provides CCRC is an attempt to do that. And so the mayor's office, just to be quite candid, is in support of that, just because it's a financially and physically more responsible approach, in my opinion. I hope that helps.
And I agree 100%. None of this is to put a bad light on the people running this. They're doing a great job. The original question, not on here, but my original question, and the question that's been asked of me, is why are we out there to start with? And I know the history, and that's all I keep getting is the history. But it was the poor folks' home, or the pest houses at one time, and all. I know the history. I'm talking about today. We rehash contracts all the time, and what we're doing to figure out if we're doing the best thing. I understand the service out there, but we took it over because, well, it started as allowing people to stay out there that couldn't afford to be anywhere else. It's a different day. Definitely a different day. What I'm hearing, and my thoughts too, and there are nursing homes everywhere. And they take the people that are in the same situation as our residents that are out there. So there again, why is the county in this business? And I've been told multiple times by different people, it doesn't cost us. Over $200,000 we put in the roof. We have other costs. We've got 25 acres out there. If this was to close down, and I'm not saying it's going to, but if that was a decision down the road, the residents wouldn't be put out on the street. And that's the big scare that people present, along with the history. So there again, the original question that was not on here is, why are we in that business? And I was hoping these questions would be answered to answer that question. That's the whole ball of wax. No bad reflection on you guys at all. I didn't mean that at all. I applaud you for what you do, but I know how it is when someone's watching TV. They get an idea, and it spreads, and and no bad intentions at all. Thank you.
One question, Tanner. You mentioned,
Commissioner Dodd?
thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I did not ask permission. You mentioned that this is a nonprofit for the benefit of Rutherford County. I think that was your remarks as opposed to Phillips.
I said that.
Is it is there a requirement that a resident be from Rutherford County?
As part of the charter, it's for the benefit of the residents of Rutherford County. The administrator is authorized to essentially oversee who comes in and out of that, of CCRC. So if it's not a requirement that you know of.
To my knowledge, we have the ability to accept residents from.
Okay. So we're in the nursing home business. That's what we're in the nursing home business. Period.
Commissioner Irvin?
Could someone, I don't have the big history, so in a thumbnail, if possible, or as much time as you need, could you provide a history of the CCRC and how it started, kind of how it evolved, where it is now, and kind of if there's goals for the future, I'd love to hear those too. But could one of the three of you, or kind of address that?
I've looked at the book a handful of times and tried to memorize the history.
I can go through, essentially these documents are going to be the best record of the history of CCRC, the 3 of the 4 documents in front of you. The first one being the charter. The county executive at the time was Mr. Mencken, I believe. I'll give it what? And,
Okay, well, let me cut to the chase.
okay.
Okay. Was it initially started basically for those who needed care but were unable to pay for it?
I just went on the CCRC website, and I'll read this, I'll paraphrase as best I can. 1892 to 1946, the beginnings of the county farm started as the county government poorhouse, founded on this property where community care now sits. During this period, there was a poorhouse, insane asylum, prisoner workhouse, and pest house. On January 6, 1891, an agreement was reached that the county workhouse should be included in the plan for a self-sustaining county farm. By 1892, it was reported to the county court that acreage on the Jack Wade place had been purchased and the self-sustaining county farm was started. Mr. J.A. Carlton was a superintendent, also a minister, and for $540 per year, he had a job description as follows: feeding and waiting on the paupers, then burying the dead free of charge to the county. In 1901, a committee was appointed to build a pest house dealing with the flu, cholera, smallpox, dysentery, etc. Dr. J.B. Murphy Jr. was employed as the pest house physician at $3 per visit. By the 1930s, the Great Depression affected the county farm in many ways. The cost of seed caused a reduction in the food supply, and the population of the county farm increased. One interesting fact was the increase in inmates at the farm. In 1930, the inmate average population was 66, and in 1931, it was 68, and by 1925, there were only 49 inmates. By the 1940s, Mr. Ed Annabelle wrote that it appears that the notion of a rest home began to formulate. In 1959, the court voted to build a new county rest home according to the standards of the state licensing board. By January 9th, 1961, a 50-bed nursing home was nearing a reality. This would become the Rutherford County Rest Home, and then later in the 60s, the Rutherford County Nursing Home. We're getting close here. While most of the buildings at the county farm built during the early period with the bars and the cells being gone, there are still remnants. The Pauper Cemetery has been located, and that's, I think, the parcel 2 that you described. And the community care of Rutherford County was established in 1987, and new additions have been built. Future plans have begun to be put on paper to accommodate cultural change, dealing with elders, staff, and current residents.
And that's very helpful. I appreciate that getting into the record. One of the questions that was asked dealt with, or how are residents residing free of charge, and okay, how is that cost determined for residents? In other words, is it still for those of limited means, or are there folks who can afford? I'm just trying to get a sense, to not necessarily be there if that's the purpose of it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a sense for kind of what's the demographic mix or socioeconomic mix or whatever.
Yeah, so I'll try and keep it simple for, I guess, just general terms. So basically for insured payers, there's Medicare, there's Medicaid. Those are based off of, I don't know, your income or where you're withstanding. And, our skilled residents are people that are Medicare or managed care skilled people, and those are set. Anybody that comes in with an insurance has a set reimbursement rate. We don't get to decide what people pay within the community. The only thing we get to determine is private pay rates, and those are based off of what the community private pay rates are. So, we do assessments from other skilled nursing communities within the area, and we get to determine, that helps us determine what private pay rates are for rooms. So outside of the private pay rates, we don't get to determine what reimbursement looks like with Medicare, CMS, that sort of stuff. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I guess to Commissioner Johnson's question, I guess, I'm sure, is the mission still, to use the term that the county attorney used, the paupers rest home, is that still the main mission, or what's the mission now going forward? I don't know the answer to these questions.
Yeah, I mean, if you go based off of what the mission was back when it was a county farm versus what it is today, it would be entirely different because we're not a farm anymore. We are a skilled nursing and long-term care community. We do have residents there that we do our best to try and get them signed up with, if it be like a Medicaid insurance, whatever it is, to try and decrease and minimize the amount of private pay that they have to pay in order to be able to stay long-term within our community. We do that, but like I said, the mission for our community would be entirely different from what it was 120 years ago when it was originally established as a poor farm.
And looking at the lease agreement, the lease payment, we just received this yesterday, so I'm sorry I haven't done even the homework on the website, as the county attorney pointed out. What's the lease payment? Or am I just missing it in here?
I think it's an in-kind consideration, Commissioner. So I don't think there's any monetary consideration. It's in kind for the benefits that they're giving the community, and in exchange and consideration, therefore, we're leasing them the building to operate.
Okay, and the one agreement that seems to be missing is the management contract. Is that available?
We can get you a copy of that, absolutely.
Right. Well, thank you for answering the questions. I'd seen it, over there, I guess, as I ride down Memorial, but I had never had the opportunity to really kind of ask some questions about it. But I appreciate y'all's participation. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are there any, the other nursing homes are for profit, is that correct? How many in our county does anybody know? I've never shopped for a nursing home, but I know Adams Place is for profit, I assume. Is it? So I'd be curious, because if it is a nonprofit, that has benefit to the 90 residents who are out there, or however many there are. And that would be a government participation for the common good of those residents. Otherwise, they might pay more if it were a for-profit facility, right? But otherwise, I'm going to say we're in the nursing home business. Correct, but the Medicaid part is reimbursed. The funds that that the profit funds, and I guess we need to see your management agreement, because if it is profitable, where do those funds go? Of course, we read the minutes. It operated at a loss last month. There's $4 million in cash. The census is stable. Just looking at the minutes. I guess I'm leading up to where do the profits go. If it's a nonprofit, they have to stay in it by 501(c) rules or whatever, right? So United Church Homes is not just escalating, squeezing profits out of it, correct, as a nonprofit?
That's correct. Yeah, United Church Homes is also a nonprofit organization. So, I mean, the idea of, if there is profit, within the community, it is to turn it around and put it back into the community to help improve the care that's able to be provided. There's been growth in the community. As was said, the original community is not what it is today. When it was built in 1987, I think is when it was built. There's been additions. There's been parts of the community that have been demolished. We've added the child care community. We're considering the expansion and adding a new child care community. We've had discussions about what other use the property can be made for, rather than just being 25 acres and a lot of it being open ground. So, there's opportunities to try and find ways it's all about trying to improve the care for the residents that are there. So, I don't know if that.
Commissioner Johnson.
Unless I misunderstood what I read about the agreement, the county didn't say it, but in so many words it did. The county cannot go out there and use the remainder of the land because the leasing all of the land. So on the remaining property, we couldn't go out there and build something that's very beneficial to all of our county constituents.
If I may, Commissioner, so two items there. I would think that if the county owns the parcel, first and foremost, and so if the commission desired to utilize part of the parcel for some other purpose, I imagine that discussions could be had with community care, and I would imagine that they would be open and acceptable to that. That's point one. Point two is there's a property description here in the lease under parcel 1. I don't know when that survey was done, and I don't know if this survey encompasses the entirety of the 25 acres or just a portion of that. I'm sure we can find that out and talk to the county engineer and see. So it may be that they're only leasing a portion of the 25-acre parcel and that the county has not leased the remainder. I just don't know as I sit here.
One thing I forgot to mention too is during my questioning of different people that I thought would have answers without bringing it out in the public, I was told kind of point blank, well, if it came to wanting to sell it, you can't sell it anyway. Well, yeah, the agreement can be terminated with a 90-day notice by the leasee or leaseor. So that tells me then it's back in our hands and we could sell it if we chose to. There again, I'm not saying we're doing it, but it could be done.
Any other questions?
The mayor has said all he needs to say on this topic, and he thanks the chair for the opportunity to say less.
I see we got board member Commissioner Johnson back there. Would you like to have any input to this discussion since you're on the board? Commissioner Paul Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson asked before we started this meeting if this discussion could be had at the board meeting tomorrow to update the board, especially the new members of the board, the new member of the board that represents this commission, go through the history and talk about those questions and what we found. Could that be discussed at the board meeting tomorrow?
As the chair, the agenda for the tomorrow board meeting, Commissioner Johnson, has already been set. Obviously, on unfinished business or other business, we can bring it up, but it's unlikely because of the time necessary to do the proper preparation to answer those questions. It's unlikely we'll be able to answer all those questions. So what we can do, most certainly at tomorrow's board meeting, we put that on the agenda for the following meeting, if that's acceptable, and that gives CCRC and the mayor's office time to do the necessary research so we can have the answers to the questions that were asked tonight. Would that be acceptable? Thank you.
Any other committee member got any questions? Would you like to have the board, after they have this discussion, bring it back to this committee so you can see what they discuss?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the board and the chair will be glad to bring back the minutes of this portion of the discussion at the next appropriate committee meeting. If the committee so desires, we can have a further discussion at that time, but we'll have those minutes of those meetings available for further discussion if you so like.
Committee members, would you like that? We don't need no motion on it, I don't think. Just have that information brought back to the committee, and we can continue the discussion based on the board discussion. Okay, any other questions? Not. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, just
Oh, I just, go ahead, Commissioner Dodd.
that all may have to go to Health and Ed as opposed to property management. That's Health and Ed, we have CCR as a component of our agenda. Go ahead.
Yes, and if I may, Chairman, the questions having originated in this committee need to come back to this committee.
Yeah.
However, having said that, as Chair of Health and Ed, if you request for the same presentation to be made at Health and Ed, because there is oversight there as well, and I will also be there, we'll be glad to cooperate with Health and Ed Committee to do the same.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But ultimately, this committee may have the physical plant. That committee may have the lease agreement. And so it ultimately have to go there, and I digress, but at some point we may have to make sure we're at the right committee.
No, Commissioner Dodd, Chairman Dodd, as a matter of fact, it's not uncommon for an issue like this to be parked in a number of different committees that have dual oversight. So that's, quite honestly, that's not uncalled for, and we'll be glad to cooperate that if that's what you'd like for us to do. Good.
Okay, everyone agree? Okay, so thank you for the discussion on the nursing home. Next on the agenda is courthouse use form change. I imagine the county mayor probably need to stay with us. County mayor?
Did you think he was leaving?
I thought he was leaving. Grab him. I think maybe you need to stay with us to listen to this.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
So, the Office of the Mayor tasked with reviewing of the rules and regulations regarding use of the courthouse grounds, and we were blessed to have Mr. Hennessy, who has a legal background, as all you know, go through this particular document and revise the document based on some use changes that have occurred recently here that have created some challenges. And so this document is a result of Mr. Hennessy's work and my approval. And so we're submitting this for your review. So, Mr. Hennessy?
And as you will recall, we brought this up at last month's meeting as well, and there were some questions and things that were asked of us to look at and maybe go a little bit further than what we had gone originally and just making a couple of minor changes. And so we've made what we believe to be responsive changes to the questions and things that were asked of this committee, and we would submit it for your approval.
My apologies. You should have, do you have the red line version in front of you, Eric?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great. So you should have on your SharePoint the red line version, which are the corrections. So we can either do, if you don't mind me, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. I've kind of taken over and didn't mean to do that. Well, it's your committee, Mr. Chairman, not mine. But what we did is the red line corrections are, the red line are the corrections, addendums, or additions that we put in the proposed agreement. We can go through that, or you can read that and ask questions, but that's up to the committee, and we'll be glad to do it however the committee deems appropriate.
And I can say that, a lot of what we were trying to address, or the problems that were brought up by Mr. Dodd, Adam Dodd, in the back there, previously in regards to bathroom facilities being flooded and just different problems along those lines. So, we are trying to get things to be done in a more orderly fashion and requiring individuals who do use the grounds to clean up after themselves. We are closing the restroom facilities because this building can't handle having a couple hundred people here using the bathroom at all times. It's just not built for that and can't handle that. So that was one of the big changes that we've made, and that's that, and trying to get a policy in regards to when we would pull up the barricades and not pull up the barricades and that kind of thing. That's basically what this boils down to.
The overarching challenge that the mayor's office has with regard to the public grounds is that because of the recent renovations to the courthouse and the grounds, it's become a very attractive place to hold events. And because of that, many organizations view this now as an event center, an event location. And while we appreciate the opportunity to hold a variety of events here, that in the mind of the mayor's office, that is not its first and primary obligation. It's to serve the citizens during the day in the service of the community for which it was designed. Now, to the extent we can offer extended service to the community and various groups to have their events here, we're glad to do that, but we want to make sure it's not overly disruptive to the functionality for which the courthouse, the public square, was originally intended and designed. And so we've had to institute some measures as a result of, quite honestly, some people who have taken advantage of that opportunity. We've had some graffiti issues on the west side of the square. We've asked people not to bring their dogs and put them on the lawn. We've even posted signs, and we've had problems with pups and their poop, for lack of a better term. And we've had other issues. And so in an effort to strengthen our relationship with those organizations that would like to use this facility, we've undertaken to strengthen the user rules for that. And so we submit that to this committee for your approval. So that's a little bit of the background.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Dodd?
I think we've had a good relationship with Main Street, Inc.
We have. We have an excellent, as a matter of fact, we have an excellent relationship with Main Street.
And I would say we've had an excellent relationship. I didn't want to put words in your mouth. And I think they're an asset to our community.
They are.
And I know their advisory board president or their chairperson's here, Ms. Callender. I'm not going to ask her to come up here. I don't want to do anything like that. But I want to say, are we incorporating or do they have any influence, or do we seek their guidance in this?
No, and we can't. Okay, from a legal and practical matter. However, let me, on the record, say they have been an excellent partner in this. And any comments or reference I made to organizations that have been disrespected the grounds, they aren't the ones that have done that. Candy has come into my office. We've had, for my part, a wonderful relationship, and we hope to continue that relationship. But unfortunately, we got to treat everybody the same.
Other questions? Questions on the mayor?
Let's see, I had a quick question. Is the usage fee adequate? What's its anticipated?
The usage fee is based on the ability for what we have to do to prepare the grounds and then to follow up to ensure the grounds are appropriate and returned back to their original condition. And so there's a cost associated with that with the county that I felt like was unfair to the county to bear alone. And so we increased the usage fee to $500 from $250 for 1 day's usage. Is that correct, Eric? Is that how we did that? Mr. Eric? Is that how we did that? We went from $250 to $500? Is that correct? Okay.
And that was based in part on conversations that we had in regards to the expense that the county has used in previous times of having to send people over and that kind of thing, and their hourly wages.
The county's not trying to turn this into a business. As a matter of fact, we're trying to go the other way. We don't want this to be event center location. There are some events that are just absolutely too large for us to accommodate. As a matter of fact, the mayor's office is now looking, and we think we have found an alternative location for some very large events. That's not to turn anybody away, Commissioner Irvin. It's just to provide other options that some of these groups might find more acceptable.
Do we have a deposit in here somewhere?
There is not, no. And that was done in regards to discussions with the finance department of them having to accept a deposit and then turn right around and give it back to the individual at the end of the thing. Administratively, that would be cost prohibitive.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, with the changes in the forms, do you want a motion from this committee to accept the changes?
That would be wonderful.
Entertain a motion on the changes to the form. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we would accept this as changed.
Motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wilson. Any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Anthony Johnson?
Yes.
Chairman McAdoo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
One quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman, if we could.
Commissioner Phillips?
Could this adopted policy, it'll go before the full county commission probably week after next for final adoption. Could it be sent, could this policy be sent to all the commissioners to take a look at it before?
Absolutely. What we'll do with, would you like it sent as the red line version, or would you like it sent as approved by this committee?
I think approved by the committee is fine.
Okay. I just want to know how to send it to the county commission. We will
Get it into all of our hands before the meeting so we can take a look at it.
That's not a problem. We will take care of that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, next on the agenda, December meeting. Yeah.
Currently, the December meeting is on the Thursday before we're off for our holiday, so I didn't know if you wanted to change that or leave it as it is.
Any members?
December 20th. I believe that's right. No, I'm sorry, December 22nd. I'm sorry.
Committee members? Are we okay with leaving it at that date, or do we want to change, or? Mr. Johnson?
My only question is, does this date, as it stands now, cause you a problem, our
Oh,
staff?
no, sir, not at all. It's just always in the holiday months, especially in November and December. We just need to make sure that we have enough for a quorum, because county offices will be closed on the 23rd.
Right, but this meeting is on the 20th?
Yeah, this is on the 22nd, on that Thursday.
In other words, we don't want to look up and 6 commissioners out of town,
Yeah, right, right.
Christmas holidays. Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. Tonight worked out pretty well to do Wednesday night. I mean, I'm not sure what's going on there by schedule, but moving it to the 21st on doing Wednesday night, you're saying no? Because it is close. I know I was planning to be gone. It's fine. I can be here if we have to. It's just I'm bringing it up for discussion because moving it to Wednesday would be better, but just because there will be a lot of stuff going on at that time, a lot of things closing down, but just bringing it up.
As far as I'm concerned, we can change the time if the committee wants to change the time. Yeah, no problem with here. What about other committee members? 6 o'clock sounds okay with me.
If that would be okay with everyone, it does just get it that much further away from the events coming up around Christmas Eve, and just do it Wednesday, just like we moved up to this being Wednesday.
So am I.
What about the other committee members?
I don't have a life.
What about December the 21st at 6 o'clock?
Day is that?
What day is that? The 21st? It'd be a Wednesday like tonight.
That's fine.
I don't hear any objections, so why don't we move it to the 21st at 6 o'clock? Next, 6 o'clock? Yeah.
If the chairman saw in the next few days there was no business, would you consider canceling the meeting?
Oh, you know I will. No problem on
So,
that.
I know at Health and Ed,
Have no business, it will be canceled. Everybody know me.
because we may cancel Health and Ed because it falls in the same.
If it's no business, we will cancel. Yeah, we have in the past, so it's no problem on that. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, to the extent the mayor's office can assist you in that endeavor to ensure there is no business, we'll be glad to do so.
Okay. So we'll just set the date to 21st at 6 o'clock if we have any business to discuss. All right, committee members? Okay, is there any other business to come before us tonight? I got one thing. I would just like for the committee members to respond to the tour we had today. Do we need to continue that with other buildings, or do you have any input about the tour that you want to change, or Commissioner Wilson?
Chairman, I thought it was outstanding. I learned a lot. I thought it was time very well spent, and if we can somehow schedule it throughout the 2023 year, I really enjoyed coming a bit earlier. We could meet here, just like a lot of us are doing on Friday, going to Cookeville to check out the facility there. I like meeting here and possibly going and seeing something and then coming to the meeting. I really enjoyed that personally. I thought that worked well. If maybe we can work on planning out different ways of maybe every couple of months doing that throughout next year or something like that, just to suggest. I really learned a lot today from that.
I don't see why we can't first of the year, maybe. Yeah, you can get with Adam. And maybe our next building that I'm interested in seeing, maybe you got some that you want to see, but I would interested that we go and look at the new judicial building. The only reason I want to look at it because we got a vacant floor. And I don't like vacant space when we need space. So judicial building will be one. And it's also possible that we can look at the tags place with with Lisa. I thought she was here, but I see that she disappeared. But we may look at that building too.
Could we tentatively think about that for the January meeting?
Yeah.
Obviously not December, we may cancel. How about that for
December,
January?
if we don't cancel the meeting, then you commissioners can come back and give me your input on that. Okay? Commissioner Johnson?
Recently, I read somewhere, someone was talking about the plaza, looking at the foundation that we had put there when we actually built that. Is that an ongoing thing right now? I know we looked, years ago, we looked at maybe building a building there, and it was kind of an uproar, and we didn't. But it's my understanding the structure underneath is already there. We paid for that.
The answer to your question is yes, that is an option that the county has, is that corner lot on the plaza of South Church, and I forgot that little access road to the parking garage, but it's where the rotunda is. The county has that property. That property was originally constructed with the garage underneath it to hold a 3 or 4 story building, but since then, the state has revised the standard for basically earthquake zones, and so we don't know to what extent that standard has changed the stress levels of that existing structure. There is a discussion about us doing an engineering study to determine what, if anything, could be done over there as far as administrative facility, and that discussion honestly came up within context of that being an alternative site for those offices that are currently housed in the Goldstein building. But before we could even undertake to discuss it, there'd have to be an engineering study done. And quite honestly, Mr. Commissioner, that's rather expensive at this point since we've got a lot of other commitments in front of us. So.
Also, I think Commissioner Dodd remember that the city of Murfreesboro, for some reason, started buying up all the property in that area over there. And they were interested in the library and other properties. They had a extensive project that they were going to do on Broad Street, and we were waiting to get some feedback from them about what they were going to do with the properties over there. Sort of waiting for that, I think. Am I right, Commissioner Dodd? You remember?
There was some discussion that the library's purpose may change, but I don't recall the details. Yes, that was a component of our thought process.
Maybe we can get some information, bring it back to this committee on their future plans.
So maybe we're waiting to see if they make an offer on it?
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought that's what I was understanding.
Well, you know me, that's true. Also, I'd like to bring up something we discussed last month on the new business. We asked we were going to ask the PBA board to look at getting an engineer to look at the building to see if we could go 3 stories. And got a response back from chairman of PBA that they should have a scope and price by the first week in December on the building, so we can put it to rest if we can go 3 stories or not. Lisa's building.
So the study that Chairman McAdoo is referring to is there was a discussion brought up about the feasibility of that lot that you're talking about next to the library on top of the parking garage, about the feasibility of how many stories could we build since it was originally scoped, I think, for either 4 or 5 stories. But the state regs concerning engineering being an earthquake zone, changed with where we were, and now we've got to determine, based on the structural integrity, because that's probably 25 years old, plus or minus, and what kind of deterioration is experienced, what are loads that could it accept with new construction. And so in addition to that, I know Ms. Kroll had asked about what's the feasibility for determining putting a third story on her facility. The estimate for doing those kind of engineering studies is not insignificant, and I think that's what the Stan Vaught, chairman of the PBA, is going to be able to deliver to us next week. But I can tell you they are not insignificant. So if that's something we want to undertake, and there's an engineering study, there needs to be, I would think, a general idea that that is something we're going to proceed with, and maybe a broader discussion about what does the growth plans for Rutherford County and its administrative offices look like. And for the part of the mayor, I think this is the appropriate committee to have those beginning discussions about, with our growth, which is on an annual basis 2.7 to 3% a year, what are our plans for growing for the administrative needs of this county, other than, quite honestly, the continuing patchwork that we continue to, patchwork road we continue to go down. So maybe we can have that discussion. I hope so.
Don't worry, we will have that discussion, because I think the tour brought that up. So we will have that discussion, and I think each committee member agree with what you say, that we want to do something based on the population of future growth in Rutherford County instead of doing patchwork. So I think we're all in agreement with that. Commissioner Johnson?
I may be wrong, but I think that the one-stop building would actually help us on this too.
You're not wrong.
As far as future
You're absolutely correct.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Phillips?
Bring up one thought. Before the pandemic, before 2020, Health and Ed a lot of times would tour one of their facilities before a meeting and then conduct meetings at those facilities, such as CCR out there, okay? And we would always do that around December. Tour that building, and the commission became fond of certain situations, like because of the service that provided to citizens of Rutherford County. People that were out there loved to see us come, and we liked going out there. And we would conduct a meeting in December after that. It could be feasible that this committee, if we did decide to meet in December, could meet out there, tour that facility, and then conduct whatever small amount of business that we had at that facility. Of course, you would lose the TV time, but we understood that that was not an obstacle for us to do those kinds of things. So if this committee did decide to meet in December, that might be an option. At that facility, tour it, actually see what that facility was doing, conduct a small meeting after that. I think that might be possible, and it doesn't have to be in December. Okay, throwing that out there, it could be any time of the year, and that is a facility that a lot of us have grown fond of. You know, the thought of why are we in that business has never entered my mind until I heard it tonight, and it's a question that I've never asked myself. But I can remember back in the days, Alan, you might be able to help me a little bit, but I can remember back in the days where we asked that question, do we want to be in this business, because it was a sinkhole for the county, putting dollar after dollar after dollar into that. So the thought of closing it down was discussed many, many years ago, and the reason that it wasn't, we turned it over to a management company, and things turned around very quickly. But the reason that it wasn't was simply because citizens of Rutherford County back in those days wanted that facility there, and they wanted the county to be responsible for it. All of those things have changed, Anthony. They really have. So why we did it back in those days versus do we need to now, I think is a viable question. But why we did it back in those days, you know the history. Why we did it back in those days is because that's what the people of Rutherford County wanted. But Rutherford County was a lot smaller back in those days than it. I think those questions were viable, but to be able to tour that facility and see what it is versus what it was and what we're accomplishing for the citizens of the Rutherford County is still important to some people. Now, once again, I'm going back, Mayor Carr, I'm going back 3 or 4 mayors before you. And what was important to that administration different than what's important to us as commissioners and the mayor's office and how we look forward. So I think those questions are something that I've never thought of. It's out there, and it's part of our community, and it's part of our process that we go through. I think if we wanted to tour facilities, that would be a really good one since this discussion tonight, to tour that facility and see what they're doing out there. The daycare center is something we've been talking about for a couple of years, and the expansion of that daycare center to be able to provide a service to employees who don't work out there but who do work back shifts. Those types of things gained a lot of steam and a lot of momentum over the last couple of years. Officer, and you work second or third shift, what are you going to do with your kids, you know? And there were a lot of things that were going on over the last couple of years to expand that facility. I just think the discussion was that that would also enhance the attractiveness of that facility, county perspective. So I haven't been out there in a couple of years, but Christmas time is really cool. Decorations that those seniors do. Just the thought of entertaining people is really neat, and it puts a different perspective on how we look at how we treat certain individuals as they get a little bit older. I'm not even aware if now whether we've changed our policies to where we accept people from outside of Rutherford County, but I know that for years and years and years it was a Rutherford County facility, and you had to be a resident to my mother-in-law doesn't want to go to any assisted facility, so we take care of her. But if we weren't able to take care of her, that's where she wants to be, and that's where we would want her to be.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. I was thinking along the line that we would tour the building, but not until we get this report back from the board. Like all responsible questions answered and everything, and if we get a report back from the board, then we can go over it, and we'll be glad to. We're going to tour the building, but I think it might be premature if we don't have a report back from the board. But it's just me. What about other committee members? Mr. Johnson?
I understand all your comments, Commissioner Phillips, and I appreciate them. But as far, and I don't mean anything bad, but as far as fondness, I've been in other nursing homes, and you can become fond of them too, just for what they do. I know some of them have a bad rap, you know, that's just a terrible place to be and all, but you'll hear that with any facility or any business out of somebody. But you're talking about, and the reason I brought these questions up, you're talking about servicing the community. You've got, what, less than 100 people that are residents out there? Okay, but, well, say less than 200 out of a county of 130 residents or so. So, I mean, we've got many residents here. I can't remember our population right now, but that's a small number. And if that's the only place they had to go, I would have never brought up a question on that. But that's not the only place. And there again, we handle the budget for this county, and that's every penny that the taxpayers pay. And that's our job. And there again, no offense meant, but to become fond of something can take you down a rabbit hole, and not that that is, but you can spend a lot of money you shouldn't be spending because you're fond of something. And I can be fond of it, but I can still make a financial decision of whether it's the right thing to do. And I think all of us can that's here. We have a good county commission. There's no doubt in my mind, a good county mayor. We can make the hard decisions. And that's just what I'm asking to do, is eventually come to a conclusion on this. Is it what we need to do, is to stay in that business? Because like it or not, we're in the nursing home business. Many other corporations are. The nonprofit really doesn't play into it because they're not getting cheaper rates out there. One of our speakers alluded to that they base their prices on what other nursing homes do. I mean, he stood up there and said it tonight. So I'm having a hard time, and I can be swayed, but right now I'm having a hard time seeing how this is helping our citizens.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Johnson, I think on this matter, you and I might just have to agree to disagree, and here's why, if I may. The county has been performing this service to the community for a long time. And for good or for ill, it's become an expected service. The residents out there are some of the most vulnerable, if not the most vulnerable in our community. This mayor in its office believes, rightly or wrongly, that it has a special obligation to the most vulnerable. That's what I believe. And the upheaval in their lives would be catastrophic. I can say from personal experience that my brother and sister and I just put my mother in an assisted living place. I'm not going to go into details, but she's 89, and she has special medical considerations, not unlike what you would see if you went to CCRC. I can tell you the environment for aged assisted living is extremely competitive. To assume that they can just go anywhere else with family members within reasonable proximity would be an incorrect assumption. Literally, in a brand new facility in Brentwood, my mother got the last room of a facility that holds about 200 residents. Literally the last room. It's full. And so it's a very, very competitive environment. And I dare say, committee, it's going to get even more competitive as this population continues to age. So you're correct. You are absolutely correct. We as a body need to decide what, if any, additional action we're going to take, not just regard to CCRC, but those in our community who are most vulnerable, who might need us to step up and offer assistance. And if they do, and we agree that we are going to offer that assistance, exactly what does that assistance look like? So to the extent we want to have a broader conversation about the role of government, in particularly this government and this office of the mayor, I think it's an excellent, excellent conversation to have. But when we have that conversation, I want us to have that conversation to be mindful of the fact that I do believe, this office of the mayor does believe, we do have a responsibility and an obligation to those most vulnerable. So I look forward to a healthy debate and a healthy conversation so we can determine that path for Rutherford County, not just for CCRC, but for the next 15, 20, and 30 years. Thank you for your indulgence.
Anybody else? Any other comments on the other business? Not, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, ma'am.